The best financial advice I have ever seen rarely begins with some exotic investment. It does not begin with a stock tip. It does not begin with some private credit structure, some tax shelter fantasy, or some very clever sentence designed to make ordinary people feel stupid for not knowing what the elites know. It begins somewhere much more humbling. It begins with looking. That is harder than it sounds. Most people will work all day, worry all night, and still never sit down quietly enough to look at what their money is actually doing. They know they are stressed. They know they feel behind. They know they want more. They know the bills keep arriving. They know the card keeps getting swiped. They know the numbers do not feel good. But they do not really know the shape of the problem. And that is why they stay trapped. Because you cannot change what you refuse to look at. That is the mother line of this whole story. A better financial life does not begin when you make millions. It begins the moment you stop guessing and start facing the truth of what your money is already doing. That is where control begins. And if I were teaching this from scratch, which is exactly what I am going to do here, I would keep the same sequence the source uses because I think the sequence is correct. First, see what is happening. Second, give every dollar a roll. Third, automate the system before the world steals your attention and your money. Fourth, define what enough actually means before you spend your whole life chasing a number that moves every time you get near it. That is the right sequence. So, let us begin with the first and most important shift. Make the money list. Most people hate the word budget, and I do not blame them. Budget sounds like punishment. It sounds like a hand on your shoulder saying no. It sounds like a school principal for grown adults. That is why the source S reframe is so useful. Your budget is not a no plan. It is a say yes plan. That is the right way to think about it. A real money plan should not just tell you what you cannot do. It should help you say yes to the things that matter, but safely, intentionally, and without destroying your future. In the process, the source puts it beautifully. A budget is there to say yes when, if, and after. That is a much healthier mental model than pure restriction. Fay Falicite, Fay turn 54, file 0 Fay. Now, if I were sitting with someone who had never done this before, I would not begin with numbers. That is another reason the source is smart here. You begin with words. What do I spend money on? That is it. Do not overcomplicate it. Just write the categories down: mortgage, rent, credit cards, groceries, eating out, car, gas, utilities, phone, child care, streaming, subscriptions, grooming, insurance, entertainment, shopping, travel, whatever it is, get it out of your head and onto paper. The source is right that at the beginning you should not even think about the amounts yet. Just write the words Fay Falicite, Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay. Why does that matter? Because overwhelm thrives in vagueness. Once things are named, they become more manageable. Then you move to step 2. Now assign approximate monthly amounts. For the fixed items, that will be easy. The mortgage is the mortgage, the rent is the rent, the minimum loan payment is the minimum loan payment. But many categories live in fog until you go looking: groceries, takeout, electricity, apps, subscriptions, random digital convenience spending. That is where the source S advice becomes especially important. Pull the statements. Look at the last few months. Stop relying on your feelings and start relying on the record. Fay Falicite, Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay. Then step 3. How much money is actually coming in every month? Not how much you hope to earn, not what a good month looks like, not what your annual salary sounds like on paper, what actually lands on average each month: wages, side income, alimony, child support, bonuses averaged out if appropriate. Whatever is real, write it down. And then comes the part the source calls the tears and tissue step. That is exactly right. Add up what you spend, subtract it from what you make, and now you meet reality. For some people, this is the first honest money moment they have had in years. The source describes exactly this emotional collision where the math finally becomes undeniable, and people realize they are spending more than they earn, or that their entire lifestyle is being supported by blind drift rather than intention. Fay Falicite, Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay. That is painful. Good pain is useful when it reveals the truth. Now, once you have that number, do not immediately rush into dramatic vows about never having fun again. The source is excellent here. Before you start slashing categorize, that is the real next step. First category is B for bills. These are the obligations that, if unpaid, will cause someone to come looking for their money. Mortgage, rent, debt payments, student loans, the unavoidable machinery of adult life. Second category is U for usage. Based bills, utilities, and similar things where the number can fluctuate depending on how you use them. Water, electricity, data, heating, things like that. Third category is C for cash or choice. That is the interesting bucket. Groceries beyond the basics, dining out, entertainment, shopping, grooming, convenience, spending, the decisions that feel small in the moment, but often eat astonishing amounts of income over time. The source SB U and C framework is powerful because it makes you ask where the money is actually going, instead of just assuming the answer Fay file site Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay. And now you reach one of the most useful conclusions in the entire source. Do you have an earning problem or a spending problem? That is the real fork in the road. If most of your money is disappearing into the B and U categories, then maybe you do not make enough. That is a very different problem. You cannot frugal your way out of a math equation that never had enough income in it to begin with. If, on the other hand, the bleed is happening mostly in the C category, then the problem is not earnings first. It is choices. That is a harder truth because it points inward, but it is also good news because choice problems can often be fixed faster than income problems. That is what I like so much about this first framework. It stops the self-pity and the self-deception at the same time. Maybe you do not make enough. Maybe you spend too much. Maybe the answer is both. Fine. Now you know that is worth a great deal. Now I want to move to the second major frame, because once you know what your money is doing, the next question becomes obvious. What is every dollar supposed to be doing? This is where the source S Next Expert is exactly right. There are only 4 buckets that really matter. That is such a relief, because most people have made money into a giant cloud of anxiety. Every dollar feels morally loaded. Every purchase feels like proof of either discipline or failure. Every category feels like a referendum on identity. No wonder people avoid it. So let us simplify. Fixed costs, savings, investments, guilt-free spending. That is it. And I want you to notice immediately how much healthier this is than ordinary budget language. Fixed costs are the things that keep the structure of your life standing: rent or mortgage, utilities, car payment, gas insurance, groceries, debt minimums. The source recommends that these sit somewhere around 50 to 60% of your take, home pay. Fine, the exact number can vary by city and stage of life, but the principle is right. If fixed costs eat too much of your take, home pay, then everything downstream gets harder. Fay file site Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay savings is next. This is the money for real life events you may need in the next 1 to 5 years. Emergency reserves, a house down payment, planned life transitions, cash buffers. The source puts this roughly around 5 to 10% of take. Home pay as a target. Again, not because everyone can hit it today, but because direction matters. Fay file site Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay investments, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, the long runway money, money that needs time more than anything else. The source gives roughly another 5 to 10% here, though it also rightly emphasizes that earlier investing is disproportionately valuable. Time does a lot of heavy lifting when you start early. Fay Felicite, Fay turn 54 file 0 Fay, and then my favorite bucket 2, guilt. Free spending. This one shocks people, which tells me how badly most people have been taught to think about money. The source says 20 to 35% of take, home pay can live here. That sounds outrageous to people who were raised on financial guilt. Good, I want it to sound outrageous. Because I think one of the most destructive features of ordinary money advice is that it treats joy as a financial error. A good system should let you enjoy your life. Otherwise, what exactly is the system for? The point is not to become a monk with a brokerage account. The point is to allocate intentionally enough that when you do spend on things you love, you can do it without shame because the important things are already handled. That is what the source means by guilt, free spending. If your debt plan exists, if your rent is covered, if you are saving, if you are investing, then yes, go buy the dessert, the cashmere coat, the gym membership, the dinner out, the movie, The roller skates whatever honestly matters to you. Fe file a site, fe turn 54, file 0 fe. This is the genius of the framework. It removes the childish moral theater around small purchases and puts the focus back where it belongs. Get the major structure right, then enjoy the rest, that is grown-up money. And the source makes one more important point here that I want to preserve. Do not over-optimize. Approximate numbers are enough to start. People waste unbelievable amounts of time chasing precision they do not need because precision delays action. 15 minutes of approximate clarity beats 6 months of elaborate avoidance. That is a real rule. Now we move to the third layer, automation. This is where the world we live in becomes very dangerous. If you do not understand what it is, the source calls it the automatic economy. And that is exactly right. We do not live in a world where money mostly leaves our lives through conscious one-time decisions anymore. We live in a world where money is constantly being attached to systems, subscriptions, recurring charges, membership models, convenience platforms, digital services, automatic renewals, and invisible drips of spending that continue with or without your attention. The source is very clear here. If you do not have a plan for your money, someone else absolutely does. Fe file a site, fe turn 54, file 0 fe. That sentence should be nailed to the wall, because it explains almost everything about modern leakage. Your phone is not just a communication device, it is a money magnet. That is the phrase the source uses, and it is brilliant. Your phone is either helping you build wealth or it is helping separate you from it. There is almost no neutral use of the device anymore in a commercial society built around recurring extraction. Fe file a site, fe turn 54, file 0 fe. Think about what the source is saying. Nobody wants to separate you from your money once. They want the lifetime value of the customer. They want the monthly subscription. They want the little renewal fee you forget about. They want the app charge you stop noticing. They want the convenience order you placed because you were tired. They want to build a permanent channel into your paycheck. That is the modern business model. And it works frighteningly well because people have lost touch with how many parties are already attached to their income. That is why the source S recommendation to actually open the system and see who is charging you matters so much. Use software if you need to. Use a tracker. Use an app. Use your bank statements. Use your card records. I do not care how you do it, but you need to know who is already feeding on your money automatically. Fe file a site, fe turn 54, file 0 fe, because here is the deeper truth. Automation is not good or bad by itself. It is just force. If you automate leakage compounds. If you automate saving and investing, wealth compounds. That is the entire battle. Use the same machine that the world is using against you, but point it back toward your own future. That is why I still think the source S focus on automatic saving is so valuable. Not because the amounts are always large, because the habit matters. The source uses David Bach's framing, and it is effective. $10,000 looks like freedom in a lot of lives. And the astonishing thing is how small the daily equivalent can feel when broken down. The source says $27.4 a day is $10,000 a year. Then it uses that to illustrate something even more important. Small daily amounts, if invested over long periods, become large numbers because of compound interest. Not because the amounts are glamorous, because the habit and the time do the work. Fe file a site, fe turn 54, file 0 fe. Now I want to be careful here. I do not want people to become hypnotized by the fantasy math and ignore the practical point. The practical point is not whether everyone can save exactly that number. The practical point is that many people are bleeding enough in unnoticed daily or monthly ways that, if redirected, could become the first real buffer, the first emergency fund, the first investment habit, the first sign that they are not trapped forever. That is what matters. The Source S100 Day Savings Challenge makes this point beautifully. Maybe it is $10 a day, maybe it is less, maybe it is $1. The amount is not the essence. The proof is the essence. Proof to yourself that money can begin accumulating in your direction instead of always leaving. That is psychologically enormous. The source also points out something very important for younger people. Technology has democratized small-scale investing in ways that were not always true. Micro-investing, roundups, automatic transfers, tiny recurring contributions that matters because it lowers the activation energy. You no longer need to be impressive to start. You need to start. Fe Phyllosite, Fe Turn 54 File 0 Fe. And this is why I think the automatic economy has to be fought with an automatic self-defense system. Automatically save, automatically invest, automatically direct money into the buckets that serve your life. Because if you rely only on daily willpower, the world will beat you. It has more notifications than you do. Now let us move to the fourth and deepest rule, define enough. I think this is the most psychologically important part of the whole source because the first three rules can improve your financial condition. But this one changes your relationship with the meaning of money itself. The source is right to point out that money becomes a scoreboard very easily. It is quantifiable. That is the trap. You can say, I make $20 an hour, I want $25. You can say, I want a bigger apartment. You can say, I want more jeans, more travel, more room, more upgrades, more visible signs that I am moving forward. Money is measurable in a way that things like being a better parent, a calmer spouse, a more loving friend, or a more fulfilled human being are not. That is what gives money such psychological power. The source uses this insight beautifully because many of the things that make a life meaningful are harder to quantify. People default to using money as the visible scoreboard for whether life is going well. Fe Phyllosite, Fe Turn 54 File 0 Fe. That is dangerous. Because a scoreboard only works if the game has an end point. Money usually does not. There is always someone with more. There is always another threshold, another lifestyle, another upgrade, another benchmark, another group to compare yourself against. And if you do not define enough for yourself, you can become financially stronger and psychologically poorer at the same time. That is the contradiction. The source S. Morgan Housel's section is so strong because it cuts through the illusion that more money automatically fills the inner hole. He makes the point, echoed through the Will Smith example in the source, that money can solve some problems, but not necessarily the deepest ones people are trying to solve with it. If the psychological hole is about status, worth, safety, identity, shame, or comparison, then pure accumulation often moves the goalpost rather than ending the chase. Fe Phyllosite, Fe Turn 54 File 0 Fe. That is why enough matters. Enough for me is what bills paid on time. No missed card payments, $1,000 saved in 6 months. Retirement contributions starting. A weekend with my children without guilt. The ability to buy myself something small without feeling I have committed a sin. These examples are all in the source S spirit, and I think they are exactly right. Enough must be anchored in your real life, your actual stage, your present context, not in someone else's luxury feed. Fe Phyllosite, Fe Turn 54 File 0 Fe, because once you define enough based on your own life, money stops being your judge. It becomes your tool. That is the entire pivot tool. Not judge tool for peace, tool for options, tool for time, tool for generosity, tool for the people you love. That is what money should be. And I think the source lands the final insight very well. If you tell yourself, I am just bad with money, you are often freezing yourself in place. That is not an identity. That is a decision to stop learning. The basics are not mysterious. Spend less than you make. Save the difference. Invest what must grow. Be patient. That is not easy, but it is simple, and the source is right to be a little blunt here. Saying you are bad with money forever can become a way of avoiding the discomfort of becoming better. Fe Phyllosite, Fe Turn 54 File 0. Fe, I do not want that for you. I want you to see what this whole sequence is really offering. First, honesty. Second, structure. Third, automation. Fourth, emotional freedom from the endless scorekeeping game. That is a very complete form of financial advice, not because it promises riches tomorrow, because it gives you control where you actually stand today. So let me pull the entire thing together. Rule 1, make the money list. Do not change what you refuse to see. Figure out whether your issue is not enough income, too much spending, or both. Rule 2, know the 4 buckets. Fixed cost savings, investments guilt, Free spending money gets calmer when every dollar has a job. Rule 3, automate what serves you before the automatic economy keeps automating what drains you. If you do not have a plan for your money, others absolutely do. Rule 4, define enough. Because if you do not, then more will never feel like enough anyway, and the scoreboard will own your mind. That is the sequence. And I think it is some of the best financial advice a person can receive. Not because it is flashy, but because it respects reality. It respects that you are scared. It respects that you may have made mistakes. It respects that you may feel behind. It respects that money carries shame for many people, but it also refuses to let you stay vague. It asks you to look, it asks you to decide, it asks you to build systems, and it asks you to stop measuring your entire worth by a number that was never designed to hold that kind of emotional power. That is real financial advice. Not hype, not theater, not guilt, just clarity. And clarity, used long enough, changes lives.